Our eminent guests, our eminent speaker, and participants from all over the world. We have a number of participants from outside the country as well. Our guests from different parts of the country, our faculty colleagues, and our dear students. It's our proud privilege to have three very eminent people over here. To begin with our director, Professor Virendra Kumar Tiwari, who kindly generously agreed to be the chief guest of this program, this inaugural program, who has a long and illustrious career at IIT Kharagpur before he became the director. He was the former head of the Department of Agriculture and Food Engineering and Rural Development Center. He's an alumnus of IIT Kharagpur who did his BTech in Agricultural Engineering from IIT Kharagpur in 1979. He did his MTech in Farm and Machinery and Power Engineering in 1981. He did his PhD in 1985. He was also the All India Organizing Committee chairman of JEE from 2005 to 2006. And many of his pioneering initiatives in design question papers are being followed even now. His key research areas and projects involve the Center of Excellence for Digital Farming Solutions, for enhancing productivity by robots, drones, and AGV's National Agricultural Higher Education Project. These are just a few of the many that he has to his credit. He is leading several projects by Central Institute of Agricultural Engineering, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, Ministry of Agriculture and Farming Welfare, Department of Agriculture, Cooperation Farming, a Cooperation of Farmers Welfare, Government of India, and he has many more things to his credit. So we are lucky to have Tiwari sir with us, as we fondly call him and know him, our director. And we would like to request sir to start this program and share his thoughts and ideas. He has always inspired us and always supported all our thoughts and ideas. The very fact that he is here today speaks volumes of his interest in our very small center and his great support and enthusiasm for all of us. So may we request sir to share his thoughts and insights before we start this program of fortnightly lectures. Over to sir.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Patnaik. I'm very happy, and I must congratulate you and your team for having this particular seminar and a series of seminars under the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which the Government of India started from the time, because we are in the 75th year of our independence, and the programs which are being done by other centers as well. And we have various other, I think our past Dean of Students Affairs, Professor Sumesh Kumar is also there. We are involved in such activities which are actually showing that how we are really indigenous IIT of this world. Well, I'm also happy that we have great personality here to tell and see the happiness around. In fact, see the happiness around. In fact, Madam Richa Chopra, I had heard once, and I mean, I should say that I am very fortunate that Dr. Richa Chopra, I heard earlier, and we would love to hear her many times, time and again, because of her versatility as well as the knowledge and the calmness that she has, and she spreads around wherever she is there. So we are very happy, madam, that you have accepted our request. I think in this line of series, you have agreed for the first lecture, because I wanted that a person of your stature should be the first lecturer for this particular center. The center was started by, as it is known as the Rekhi Center of Happiness. Our one of the very illustrious alumnus, Satinder Singh Rekhi ji. Thank you, Rekhi Saab, that you came forward and you wanted to have a center like this. in this institute, something about 4.5 years back you thought of. And I think really today it has been the maximum relevance center of this particular institute. And I have been quoting these activities of the center whenever I talk to anybody, because this is the one which is required in today's time. Everybody knows. We are also happy that we have various experts and participants from all over the world. We have Dr. Sambhu Chatriji, who is also a person from other small country, but he has his presence itself shows to the students that yes, there is something called calmness, and the ways. Even if you are very much tired, if you sit in front of him, I am sure that you will find a lot of happiness and a lot of energy in you. So we have other faculty members who are there, along with Professor Patnaik. And Professor Patnaik is, of course, now he has about a few faculty members with him. But slowly we are thinking, I saw the vision of this particular center. But I think we need to revamp it in such a way and look forward so that this center becomes the centerpiece of the institute. Because as I said, this pandemic has shown the world that what is required today is looking inwards. And I am sure that when Madam Richa talks, we will be talking of that only, because we have been asked to put inside our homes to avoid this pandemic which has suddenly taken over the world. And with all of technology, what we can talk of, even in the most advanced world, we have the problem. And therefore, a center like this, an institute like this, the first institute of the country, it has the very valid presence and is very much important here. I think if we hear from all these people, our guests here, and I'm sure when I have requested Patnaik ji, that this should be a recurrent affair at least once every week. Then the people will know about this center, people will know about the activities of the center, and we love to, this is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So we would like to join people from all over the world. Now, because of the pandemic, we are in a position to connect to so many people in the world. And therefore, this has become a platform through which we will be connected. And really, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam's thing is now coming up because of the pandemic, I would say. Earlier, maybe about two years back, nobody had thought of that we should have. We were only thinking that Richa ji has to be brought to IIT Kharagpur to speak. But now she can speak anytime and from anywhere in the world. So, and that's a great thing. So therefore, I think we should be having such meetings every week. And like other centers, I think the Center of Happiness will be known all over the world. And I'm sure, because I see that this is also put to the YouTube and all that. So many of our alumni, I suppose it will be seen by our alumni, or the non-alumni and other people in the world who will know that in the Institute of Eminence, IIT Kharagpur, we have centers like this. We have also Academy of Classical and Folk Arts. We have Academy of Leadership, and we have what not you can talk of. In fact, our institute is the first university going to be a university which is multidisciplinary education research university, because you know that we have management, we have law, we have mining, we have architecture, and now we are going to start medical as well. We have a hospital which OPD has started for that, and the college is also going to start with every many wishes of all of you. We hope that we will be able to start the MBBS education from this year. So I think the relevance of this center is very much, and with the help and cooperation from each one of you and others who are seeing this activity, I am sure the center will go ahead, and our friends Professor Rekhi ji and our Professor Patnaik and other colleagues will take this center forward. I am quite confident of this. With this, I would like to say thank you, all of you, and welcome all of you for this talk. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, I must reiterate the point that the entire idea of this lecture series has been because of Tiwari sir's suggestion in a meeting that we take it forward, and we felt really inspired, and we are trying our best to see that every 15 days we have a talk as he has suggested. And we sincerely hope that he will find a little time from his busy schedule and be available for some of the talks whenever he finds something relevant and has a little time to spare. That will continue to inspire us and energize us. Thank you very much, sir. Now, I will introduce our other guest, our guest of honor, Mr. Satinder Singh Rekhi, who is the CEO of R Systems with many offices across the world. He also happens to be an alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, and he is very much a part of the Rekhi Center, as Director Sir has already said. And he has also set up a number of happiness centers in many other places like the Amity University in India, University of California, Sacramento. And he has the Rekhi Foundation, which focuses on happiness and different aspects of happiness across the world. So it's our honor and privilege again that Dr. Rekhi has kindly made himself available, and we would request him to say a few words before the beginning of the talk. Over to Rekhi, sir.
Thank you, Professor Patnaik, and for the introduction. And I'm inspired by Professor Tiwari. Whenever he comes, that he always encourages the center. It's wonderful to hear that. And we're all waiting to hear Dr. Richa Chopra. And as Professor Tiwari says, he's a very calm person, and after her talk, we will all have gained a lot. I've been asked to speak for 2 minutes, and I want to say something. I always get this question: what is the difference between success and happiness? How are they connected? We are watching the Olympics. We know that the person who gets a gold medal or a medal is successful. And probably the persons who don't get are not successful. And what is the connection between happiness and the success that one gets? And I'll tell you a small story. It's only 1 or 2 minutes. There was this athlete who was a sprinter, a very good sprinter, 100 meters race. He would get medals after medals. He used to win. And the gold medal or the medal he gets, the happiness would last for a short time, and it was not lasting very long. He was successful, but the medal did not give lasting happiness. So he decided to go to a wise man, and he reached the wise man and said, "Look, I get these medals, but there's an emptiness inside me. I'm not that happy. My happiness is only for a very short time. What should I do, master?" So his master said, "Okay, when is your next race?" He said, "Tomorrow." He says, "Okay, tomorrow you will win again. If you do win, I will be there at that stadium. You come to me after you have won." Okay, the athlete said, "That's wonderful." So the race happened and the athlete won. He got a good applause. And as agreed, he came to the wise man and said, "What do you want me to do?" With the wise man, on one side was a very old man, and on the other side of the wise man was an old woman, probably 90 years of age, and the wise man had got them from some lonely village. He said to this athlete, "I want you to now race with these two people on the track, but make sure that all three of you reach the finish line together." The athlete said, "Okay." He took the hand of the man and the woman, and in the center, he was in the center, and he held their hands, and they walked slowly and steadily. The couple was very old. He had to help them. They applauded and paused, but he finished the race along with them after a struggle. After they finished the race, there was a standing ovation. The spectators cheered very heavily. So the athlete came back to the wise man and said, we have never seen such a big ovation. I won so many medals. What happened? Whom were they cheering?" the wise man said they were cheering the old couple. And then the athlete asked, but why is it I'm feeling happier today? He says, that is the secret for happiness. They won and you took them to the finish line. Success is when you go to the finish line yourself. Happiness is when you take others along with you. When you take more and more people and share your success and take them to the win line, that is true happiness. That is what our department is working towards. Professor Patnaik, Samduji, Mandal, I see Anuradha, and Suvalakshmi, all of them are working to make all of the students and other people successful. That is true and lasting happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Rekhi sir always tells stories and parables which we remember fondly. And thank you again for sharing a beautiful lesson of life with us and making us aware of the fact that we probably should be living less for ourselves and more for others. So with two very important and knowledgeable and wise people sharing their insights and thoughts with us, I believe we are ready to go, and we should not be making people wait because right now we are waiting for the talk to begin. So I'll very quickly introduce Dr. Richa Chopra to the audience, and we will ask her to start the talk. Dr. Richa Chopra has a master's in child development, a doctorate from the Faculty of Arts Department of Psychology, Guwahati University. He has an advanced diploma in psychological guidance and counseling. She happens to be the former founding head in charge of the Department of Contemplative and Behavioral Sciences at Sri Sri University, where I had the good fortune of interacting with her. She has also been a core working member for the National Assessment and Accreditation Council towards development of YOCO accreditation framework for higher education institutes. Recently, she curated and organized Atmanirbhar Bharat India in the 21st Century faculty development program, again in the contemplative science, Sri Sri University, in collaboration with the Center for Professional Development in Higher Education, UGC. She is on the advisory role for many national and international committees pertaining to contemplative psychology, yoga psychology, spirituality, and Indian psychology. She currently serves as the project lead and chief mentor at Drishti Foundation for a MetLife Foundation USA founded project. And she also has many other talents. Amongst them, she is a wonderful musician herself. And we are privileged that she has kindly agreed. The director also wanted that she should be with us, and we were so happy to know that sir wanted that, and we are so happy to know that Richa ji agreed without a single moment's hesitation, which tells us of the deep affection she has for the center as well as for IIT Kharagpur. So over to Richa ji to start her talk. Thank you very much.
Pranams and namaste to all the Guru Janas. We had Guru Purnima yesterday, and as Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankar ji says, each one of us is a Guru because we have been guiding lights and mentors to someone or the other in our life. So allow me to begin with a prayer, and we can maybe just close our eyes, invoke all the Gurus. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guru Namah. Om Shanti Shanti. I'm deeply honored and humbled to be invited at the inaugural ceremony of a beautiful fortnightly lecture series that Rekhi Center has started. And I'm really very overjoyed that we are also, as Director Saab mentioned, looking at indigenous philosophies and practices of happiness. And I personally believe, from my experience of living with a master for the last 21 years with Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankar ji, yes, that these practices actually make a lot of difference in our life. it really makes a lot of difference. So I would keep the session in an interactive mode today, and I would like to share 3 stories, not one, 3 stories. And each of the story that I would share would be connected to the topic that is the recipe for happiness and from the Indic wisdom. The first story is about a beggar. And as any beggar, he would beg. He begged all his life, and he was a lazy beggar. So he sat in one place, perhaps from his childhood till his old age, and he begged and he begged. And as all mortal beings, one day the beggar had to leave his body and he passed away. So the people in his vicinity felt, why even take his body to some other area? Let us bury him here itself. He had not created a very clean place around him because he was sitting in one place all his life. So they dug that area, and after digging, after quite some length, they saw that there was a bag of gold, and the beggar was sitting on that bag of gold all his life. So I'm not going to say what is the moral of the story, but I give a hint that everything, all the stories are linked to where we are heading by virtue of this topic. So it is good that we start relating that the beggar sitting on a bag of gold all his life and really begging, and he passed away. The second story is about 2 monks, the younger monk and the older monk. And they belonged to an organization wherein it was forbidden to even interact with women in any manner, talk to them, whatever. It was forbidden. So they were passing by a jungle, thick jungle, and there they heard the voice of a woman shouting for help. The younger monk, he just went to the direction from where the voice was coming. He went into the direction, he saw that a woman was drowning in the river. So without any hesitation, he jumps into the river, takes the woman on his back. She was almost half fainted by then, and he makes her cross the river for 2 hours. The older monk, he was extremely angry. He said that he has broken all the rules, all the laws of an organization. So when they reach back to their organization, they both go to the head monk, and he makes a complaint about the younger monk that he has done a mistake. He has carried a woman on his shoulder, and he should be ousted. He has really broken all the rules and the regulations. So the head monk was a wise person. He said he carried that lady for 2 hours on his shoulder, but you carried that lady from the forest till here, and probably you will be carrying that lady in your head for the rest of your life. So there is a hint here about the state of the mind of the younger monk and the monk who was bound by certain protocols. And the last story is about a guru, and he has 4 disciples. And he tells all his disciples, you go into the forest and you will find something. And once you find that, do not stop, keep going until you have found what you really are bound to find. So he gives them this simple instruction. And all the 4 sincere devotees, sadhaks, they leave for the jungle. And after walking for many, many days, they find a patch of silver trees. And the first one says, there cannot be anything more than this. This is the ultimate, the penultimate that life can offer, a patch of silver trees. And he stops there. So the other 3 go ahead. And after many, many days, they come across a patch of gold trees. Then the second one says, there cannot be anything more than this. This is the penultimate, gold trees. And they leave him, the 2, they go ahead. And then after many, many days, many, many months, they find a patch of diamond trees. And he says, this is the penultimate. What more can life offer? Diamond trees. So he stays there. And the 4th one, he keeps going, he keeps going, he keeps going. And he finds platinum trees or whatever. But he doesn't stop because he remembers the voice of his guru. Keep walking till you have found something which you are supposed to find. And at the end, months pass, days pass, weeks pass, years pass. The jungle comes to an end, and there is a stream of pure white light, and he becomes one with that light. So these three stories, the first was of the beggar who was sitting on a bag of gold all his life, begging. The second was of the two monks. One was the spontaneous monk, though he followed the protocol, but perhaps he had the spontaneity, the enthusiasm to respond to the command of the present moment, vis-a-vis the older monk who was not spontaneous enough to attend to what the present call was. And the third was of the four who were walking, and based on whatever they thought would be the penultimate, they stopped and they just restricted themselves there. So we will join the dots maybe in the end, but I'm sure these three stories in context of today's topic, I'm sure all of us are already getting certain hints about happiness and it being connected to our state of mind, and it is not connected to something outside. So the search for happiness is something which all of us, as human beings, any species, all of us have. Anything that we do in our life, whether we want success or career or money, the ultimate aspiration is to feel happy. But to feel happy or to attain happiness, there are two ways. One is the wise way, and one is the otherwise way. The otherwise way is normally most of us going for in terms of pursuing for the mundane, but which is transient, which is fleeting. It may give us an abhas of happiness, but after some time we realize that the same thing is really not giving us happiness. And then there is a wise way. I am not an expert on the Upanishads, but yes, I would like to quote something from the Taittiriya Upanishad, the second chapter of Brahmananda Valli. There is a portion, section 8 of Brahmananda Valli, which talks about Ananda Mimamsa, the analysis of happiness. 4,500 years ago, it was beautifully said that think of a situation. What is the highest imagination that any human being could think of which can give someone happiness? And they have given those characteristics. And very beautifully they say that to really have the highest happiness, one must be young. It is mentioned. Yes, young because one has the sunnier side of life, one is not handling one's body and so many other things that may come. So it says yuva. Then second is sadhu yuva. One must have good intentions to be happy. The unit of happiness that would be sadhu yuva. Then third is the person should have high educational qualification, high that is needed. Then it talks about the wealth, the physical health, the physical. And the last it talks about is the wealth that one can really have on this planet. So if a person has all of this, then one can really be very, very happy on this planet. That's how they start the analysis. One unit of happiness is seen. And then one leaves this planet after having all this. Then the conventional part of the Vedas, it talks about there are other worlds and one needs to, if one has that, one needs to enjoy happiness, one needs to have the sharira, one needs to have that object of gratification, one needs to have the ambience, the loka. So once one gets all this in this physical world, to experience the other nuances, subtleties of happiness, in the other world, one can go and have a better sharira, a better kind of objects to experience and better look. Yes. So, but if we put a stop here that, yes, if our happiness, we are looking at the happiness that the world can give, the way it is explained in the Ananda Mimamsa, think of the highest happiness that can be given, or the happiness in the other world. That the Vedas, even the Buddhist philosophy, they talk about the other worlds and how we can have happiness through proper karma and so on and so forth. But if we want to put a stop here and just, we would maybe like to consider a story again when I go to the philosophical aspect as to how Vedanta looks at happiness. And here the story is about a dog. A dog the dog gets a nice bone, and the dog chews on the bone, and the bone actually creates a prick in the dog's mouth, and the bleeding is mistaken as the taste of the bone that the dog feels is giving the dog some happiness. So this is actually corroborated to a similar situation, that as human beings, from the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, as human beings, we are all Sat Chit Anand, and the world is a projection of that Brahman. And we are not able to experience that self, that Sat Chit Anand. This is obscured because of our mind, and especially when the mind gets restless because of the desires. So all of us have desires. It could be a mundane desire like wanting an ice cream, or a desire to get a promotion, or a desire to get into a relationship, so on and so forth. And until that gets satisfied, the mind becomes restless and the self is not able to reflect. So this is corroborated to the story of the dog, which says that it is the gratification is not in the bone, but the gratification the dog feels is in the bone, but it is because of the taste of his own blood. So likewise, the gratification is not in the objects of the world, but it is the abhas that we get, that these objects are gratifying because the mind gets calmer when the desires get fulfilled for some time. The next question is, if the mind gets calmer after the fulfillment of a desire, because the soul reflects in that calm state of mind, so why not keep having desires after desires, and the mind is calm? The soul will reflect through that. The question, then the answer is, there is another way. Either we keep running after the objects of gratification, or we look at ways wherein we can calm our own mind, so that the property, the calmness of the sphere within us, which is beyond the mind, if we can tap to that, that is a wiser way than to run all our life looking for things, hankering for things. Now, when we talk of the mind here, it's good if we can just understand what the mind is. I'm sure we all understand. But yes, we all have a physical body which we can relate to. Our arms, legs, and this is a physical body made of flesh. Beyond this body, we have the second level of existence, which is our breath, which is moving in and out. The first thing that we did on this planet was not cry, but we took a breath in. Many of us say we cried, but the reality is the first thing we took was the breath in, and then we cried. And the last thing that we will do when we leave this planet will be to breathe out. That is the reality. So the whole life is the first breath in and the last breath out. And in this span of first breath in and last breath out, we have so many roles and so many responsibilities and so on and so forth. First breath in and the last breath out. That is what life is. So beyond this physical body, beyond the breath, we have a dimension which is the mind. Now, if I say, can you show me the body? Yes, it is very easy to show the physical body. Can you show me the breath? Yes, may not be. The breath is not seen, but we know that something is happening around the nostrils. We can feel the movement of the breath, exhalation, inhalation. We can feel that. Okay, show me the mind. Very difficult to spot where the mind is. Cannot spot, but it is certainly there. It's like a field of energy all around us, the mind. Now, what is the mind? What is the mind in terms of its functionality? It is something which helps us perceive the world. Many a times, something is there right in front of my eye. I am not able to see it because my mind is not there. I'm sure many of us have experienced this. Right now, we are sitting here, and if the mind is not here, we may not have even registered 2 sentences of what has been said in the last 15-20 minutes. So the mind is needed for the 5 sense organs to really function optimally, and we call it as manas. Now, when the information through the senses and the mind gets inside us, we have another faculty which is called buddhi, right, wrong, good, bad. For example, right now, if you're listening to me, you're saying to me, that is by virtue of the mind plus the eye and the ear. And this information, it is getting decided. Oh, she's good, she's not good, so on and so forth. That is the buddhi. So we have this faculty of buddhi. And then we have another faculty inside us, which is called the smriti. We remember things from the past. That's a different question, whether we remember good things or not so good things. But we do have a storehouse and we remember things. That is the smriti. And then we also have a sense of identity. And that is why we feel, okay, this is Dr. Anuradha, this is Dr. Patnaik, this is Dr. Richa. We see ourselves different from each other in terms of whatever, our physical body, our roles, our responsibilities, designation. And that is by virtue of the ahankara, the ego. Now, if I put a question, there's 6 layers that I just took all of us through: the physical body, the breath, the mind, the intellect, the memory, the ego. 6. Now, if I ask this question, can you fathom if something has changed in your body in the last 10 years? Even if somebody has not said, all of us will say yes. The body has changed. Nobody has said it, but I know it. So who knows that the body has changed? That means there is something in me which is beyond the body, which knows that the body has changed. The body can be seen objectively. Now, if I put the second question, can you see a change in your breath or your mind? I'm sure all of us will be able to say yes. The breath sometimes goes fast, it goes slow. Yet the mind also sometimes is very stable. It is in the moment, and sometimes the mind is too scattered. So we are objectively able to see our breath and mind and our intellect also. Oh, my intellect is very nice. Oh, my intellect is not very nice. We are able to see the quality of our intellect and the quality of our ego also. So that means the fact that I'm able to see all my levels of existence objectively means that the subject is different and the object is different. If I have a phone in my hand, this becomes the object, eyes become the subject. If I squeeze my eyes, relax my eyes have become the object and perhaps my mind is the subject. If I close my eyes and I want to just know what is happening in my mind, what thoughts are running, what emotions are running, whether pleasant, unpleasant, I can become a witness to my own mind in terms of what is the content of the mind, what is the feeling in the mind. That means the mind is also an object and there is something beyond the mind which can see the mind, which is the subject. So this knowledge of especially the yoga philosophy, that the mind can be understood, the mind can be cultured to go beyond the mind, which is the awareness in all of us, can actually alleviate all the suffering and the misery that we feel in the world, in this unchanging world. In this world, everything is changing, for sure. Our bodies has changed, our breath has changed, mind has changed. What we thought yesterday, even that has changed today. Everything has changed and everything is going to change, that is for sure. But there is something in me which is not changing. And all of us can really, really relate to that unchanging awareness in me. We call it awareness, we call it consciousness, we call it self, we call it Brahman, whatever. All of us can really relate to that which is unchanging in me. And once I can connect with changing, what happens? I start to become more centered, no matter what the vicissitudes in this life is. The sukh and the dukh will continue in the life. People will be born, people will be dying. There will be humiliation, there will be criticism, there will be people who will praise us, there will be people who will not praise us. All this will continue forever. So rather than getting caught up in all that and knowing the changing reality of this physical world, even the changing reality of the body and the breath and the mind and the intellect, And connecting with the unchanging, remaining in that seat of the unchanging, that is Drishtohu Swarupe Avasthanam, being in that state of the seer. So when we talk of yoga in terms of culturing the mind, it is not about the asana. The first, it is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the cessation of the modulations of the mind. Thousands of years back, they have talked, Maharshi Patanjali has talked about the modulations of the mind. Thousands of years, 5 modulations. The mind imagines, Vikalpa. The mind gets caught up in wrong knowledge, Viparyaya. The mind goes to the past, Smriti, Nidra, and Pramana, caught up in logic. And if we see that, yes, our mind is all the time caught up in one of these 5 states. Isn't it beautiful? Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So what is yoga? It's a discipline. It's a abhyasa. He's already given the hint that the mind can be cultured because it is an abhyasa. Attaha yoga anushasanam. Now I will tell you about the discipline of yoga. That means it's an abhyasa. It's a practice by which the modulations of the mind can be arrested. They can be relaxed. And when the mind is relaxed, one gets a glimpse of who I am. And that is what Vedanta also talks about. That I am the one, that unchanging. And how to get there? Through the practice of yoga. One can get there through the practice of yoga. So the hint in all the stories that I started my topic was that as the beggar, all his life begged for things to happen to him, and he finally died sitting on a bag of gold. Just to reflect, are we less than the beggar? Are we wanting some things to happen to us? Some relationship to handle, some position to be given, someone to say a few good things to me. And until that happens, the mind is so restless, isn't it? So we are dependent, we are wanting things, not realizing that this will all change. Opposites will keep happening all the life. The second story was about the 2 monks in the river, in the jungle, holding the women at the back. If we ask ourselves, is our mind crowded or is our mind spontaneous, like the young monk? He was a yogi. He knew that he is governed by those protocols of the organization. But in the present moment, if that meant to save a life, he did his dharma. So, is our mind crowded, carrying so many people and situations, and one day we will die? Or is the mind spontaneous, totally in the moment? Because happiness is there, in the moment, now, 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 now. Past is gone, it's never going to come back. Even 1 minute before, if it is 25th July 2021, 5:46 p.m., this moment is never going to come in history, for sure. Next moment, we really don't know what's going to happen. Who knows? We never knew that COVID is going to come. Who knows that next moment, my physical body may not work the way it is working right now. It is a possibility. Past is gone, future is unknown. What is there right now, this moment? Are we really here? Like that young monk, totally in the moment. And when the mind is so free, moment to moment, moment to moment, moment to moment, there may be 101 things, but I can attend to everything with that calmness and with that highest integrity and depth. Otherwise, the mind is crowded. So yes, happiness is certainly not in the objects. I'm sure we all realize. Dr. Ricky talked about that story. It is certainly not in the outer. We have a lot of talk in positive psychology about happiness, which is equal to pleasure plus engagement plus meaning. And maybe all of us have, to some extent, all of this. But in the Indian philosophy, they talk about moksha, they talk about liberation, they talk about that self, that awareness, that unchanging reality. And it is not just a philosophy. They have given all the possible practices, various meditations, pranayama, a proper diet, proper company. There's so many ways the mind can be elevated and one can be totally in one's center. So the recipe for happiness, I'm sure we all love to make our own recipes. If it's a fruit salad recipe, we will all have 101 ways to make fruit salad. There is no one way. But all of us understand that happiness is something wherein no matter what happens outside, I can be centered and I can be calm and I can be really wise. Beyond the changing body, beyond the changing mind, beyond the world, I can be really centered and calm. And how to do it? So many techniques. One way is meditation. Meditation, sitting with my own self every single day. Am I really meeting myself? Not my mind. Am I really meeting my mind? Yes, we do that all the time. But am I really meeting myself? Every single day, even if it is 10 minutes morning, evening, let's start making the time to sit with my own self. Then breathing practices. The breath has no religion. It is common to everyone. So attending to that breath, because that can really help us recharging our vital life force, that is the pranayama. Eating the right sattvic food, that is also very important. Very important. It makes a lot of difference to our vital life energy. So, right sattvic food, fresh fruit, non-refrigerated food, vegetarian food if possible, not stale food, right food at the right time, and like that young monk in that moment can really uplift our vital energy. Company of the right people, wise people around us can also help us go beyond our mind. Then moving the body, so on and so forth, so many ways. Reading good things, feeding the five senses through elevating things can really make a difference to really settle the mind. So many ways. So in this space and this time, I just wanted to give an idea about happiness and what could be the possible ways, and how understanding that life is very short. In the thousands of years that have come and gone before us and will come after us, this 70, 80 years of our life is just a drop in the ocean. Are we really living like that Sant and that Sipahi, saintly from within and dynamism in our action and totally free in our mind? With this, I would like to conclude my talk, and if there are any questions we can take, or we can have just a glimpse of a short meditation and a very powerful pranayam called Bhastrika Pranayam. But I leave it to Dr. Patnaik, whether we would like to take questions or have a glimpse of a short meditation and a powerful breathing pranayam. Yes.
I'm sure, Richaji, that our participants here would like to have both. So if that is the case, so I'm sure that we will like you to share the practice, and which would definitely benefit our members here. And that is also something our director feels is very important for us, practice. So maybe with that we can begin, and then we can take a few questions.
So we will do something for our mind, because the mind is the badha for us that obscures the reality. And the nature of the mind is past and future, it is not in the present moment. How to bring the mind to the present moment cannot be brought. The mind cannot be tamed by the mind. As simple as that. If I say, okay, let's think of anything but a dancing monkey, the first thing that will come in the mind will be a dancing monkey. So that means the mind has to be brought to the present moment, not through the mind, but it can be brought through the breath. So we have seen that when we get angry, many a times, if we have noticed, the pattern of a breath changes. It becomes very fast. And if we are not feeling good, feeling low, the breath also becomes very shallow. We have noticed that. We all are human beings and we have these emotions, and the emotions are deeply linked to our breathing. So if the emotions can change our breath, breathing in a particular manner can also settle the emotions. That means it can settle the mind, which is constantly in a flux, past and future. As children, the mind was in the moment, and that is why we were also happy and so spontaneous. But now the mind is everywhere but being in the moment. And that is why we are not able to smile, we are not able to relax. So let's do a breathing technique. It is called Bhastrika Pranayam, and it helps us bring the mind to the present moment. So we can make a loose fist in front of a shoulder and keep the elbows slightly touching the sides of our body. We'll hit the lungs here. So when I say breathe in, the hands go up, the palms open. And when I say breathe out, hands come down and we breathe out. I will just show like this. In. So when I breathe in, my hands go up and the palms open. When I breathe out, my palms close and I breathe out. And I do it with a forceful inhalation and exhalation. So we will, once we will just do with our eyes open, and then we'll close our eyes and see how we feel about it. So let's take a normal breath in, fill up the lungs, keep a smile on your face. If you can't make it, we can fake it. It is okay. Loose wrist in front of the shoulder. See, we are hearing in front of the shoulder, but the arms are there. That means the mind is not with the ear. Yes. Now, for Bhastrika, let's take a forceful breath in, hands up, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. In, out. So I'm sure we have learnt it. Now we'll do it sincerely with our eyes closed. The philosophy of yoga is of no good until we bring the practice part of it. That is very important. So we'll close our eyes. So when I say in, we breathe in with a force, hands go up and palms open. When I say out, the palms come down to the starting position and we breathe out with a force. We'll do this with our eyes closed. Let's take a normal breath in and breathe out. For Bhastrika, breathe in, out, in, out, in, in. Continue. 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 Out, in, out, in, out, and relax. Let's keep our eyes closed. Palms on the knee facing the sky. Keep the eyes closed. Become aware of your breathing and any sensations in the body. Become aware of your mind. We'll do another round of Bhastrika Pranayam 10 times. Loose fist in front of the shoulder. Please keep your eyes closed. Elbows touching the sides of the body. Your fist facing the screen. Gentle smile on the face. Let's take a normal breath in, fill up the lungs. And breathe out. For Bhastrika, breathe in, out, in, out, in, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, out, inhale, exhale, and relax, eyes closed, palms on the knee facing the sky. Just relax. Become aware of your mind. And one last round of Bhastrika Pranayam. कंधों के सामने, look wrist in front of the shoulder, elbows touching the side of the body. Let's take a normal breath in and exhale out with a smile. Remember, this moment is never going to come back. For Bhastrika, breathe in, out, in, arms raised, out. With the rhythm. In 9, 10, and relax. Keep the arms relaxed, eyes closed, palms on the knee facing the sky. Keep the eyes closed. Relax. We'll do a very short meditation. Comfortably, easily, wherever you are. Spine straight, shoulders relaxed. A gentle smile on the face. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe out. We can keep our palms on the knee. हथेलियों को जांघों पे रख सकते हैं. Just relax. Just gently follow the instructions. Let's take another deep breath in and exhale out. Relax, relax. Become aware of all the sounds in your environment this moment. Maybe the sound of the fan, sound of someone talking, sound of the vehicle. Become aware of all the sounds in your environment right now. You are in harmony with all the sounds, the way they are right now. Take a deep breath in and let go. Just relax. Mentally, become aware. Take your attention to your right foot. अपने मन को दाएं पैर पे ले जाए. Become aware of your right foot. The right ankle, right lower leg, right knee, right thigh, and right hip. Become aware of your right leg. Relax. Take your attention to your left foot, left ankle. Become aware of your left knee, left thigh, left hip, the whole of the left leg. Relax your legs. Take your attention to your genitals, lower abdomen, navel. Become aware of your navel, stomach. Become aware of your chest, right shoulder, right arm, right palm. Become aware of your left shoulder, left arm, left palm. Become aware of your chin, lips, nose, eyes, cheeks, forehead. Become aware of your whole body. This body is a beautiful gift to us from nature. Accept your body the way it is. You are in harmony with your own body. Let's take another deep breath in And let go. Relax. Become aware of your thoughts this moment. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, whatever be the thoughts, just become aware of your thoughts. Accept all your thoughts the way they are right now. You are in harmony with your own thoughts. And with a smile, let's take another deep breath in. And let go. Relax more and more. Become aware of your feelings right this moment. Maybe pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings. Accept all your feelings the way they are right now. You are in harmony with your own feelings. With a smile, let's take another deep breath in. And let go. Relax. You are joy. You are peace. You yourself are joy and peace. Sat Chitanand. You are joy and peace. Once again, become aware of your feelings, if any. Become aware of your thoughts, if any. Become aware of your body, physical body. Become aware of all the surroundings, noises in the surroundings, if any. Wherever you are sitting, just move your body a little bit. Just rotate your neck and your shoulder. Stretch your body. Wake up to this present moment right now, feeling grateful. And whenever we may want to, slowly, gradually, we may open our eyes. This feels good. So little time with ourselves. We have to be selfish to really get connected with ourselves. And if I am centered and happy, I'm going to create that atmosphere of happiness all around. Thank you so much.
Very nice.
Thank you, Richaji. I'm sure that our director and Reiki sir would like to share quick insights and observations before we open up for questions. So, sir, few words from you.
Reiki ji first.
Thank you, Tiwari Sahab. Dr. Richa Chopra, you're wonderful. You're excellent. I thank you very much. And I'm so happy that Dr. Tiwari invited you and I got the chance to listen to you. I would like to hear you more and more, and hopefully I get that opportunity. I have one question to ask you. I don't know if you're allowing me to ask a question, but since it's a Reiki center, I should be allowed. So, when you meet the absolute reality, the unchanging reality, what happens?
I can speak only from my experience. I have gone through situations like most of us, wherein the whole association was with the mind, and that was the reality. Any stimulus from outside that would trigger the mind, and then you get caught up in that situation, and that becomes the reality. And that is how the whole dealing with the world was for many, many years. With the practice of yoga and this spiritual knowledge, understanding this over years, the last 2 decades, I think right now I have come to a state wherein I can step aside and really see things in a witness state. So no matter what happens outside, I'm able to connect with that center that has become very firm. And by virtue of that, I now realize that there is so much of a stability inside. There is no aspect of insecurity. There is no fear. There is no fear of anything. There is that eternal peace. Even if an emotion comes, which that is just like a line on the water. It doesn't stay anymore. I'm not saying that emotions don't come, anger doesn't come, grief doesn't come, but it is more or less like a line on the water. So connecting with your real self, that identity, which people have not created for you, because what people perceive of you is the perception of the world. But there is something which is beyond all the samsara, and that is the real shining light within all of us. So once we get that glimpse, that peace, that becomes so much a part of our reality. One becomes, I would say from my experience, there is so much of peace, so much of, I would say, wisdom, and all the negative things that come in the mind, one can actually really handle it like a child. The mind becomes like an object. You don't associate with the mind. Otherwise, it is vritti swarupe itaratra. You become one with the vrittis, the modulations. But with yoga, it is drishtuho swarupe avasthana, and you start coming to that space of the seer. And that has happened. That starts to happen. And once that happens, there is a lot of stability and peace and benevolence. That feeling is there.
So somewhere love also comes in, I guess.
Yes. And that
Feeling
love is, yes, it is unconditional love. It is because Gurudev has always said, we are love. We are made of a substance called love. It is when the mind is stressed that love distorts into hatred and fear. It is a side of the same coin. The Anahat Chakra. It's a side of the same coin that love turns and it becomes fear or hatred. And we can very well see that in our life. If we have loved somebody, after some time, that same situation, that same person, it leads us to feelings of hatred or fear from that same person. The same energy. So yoga gives us that tool to work on the prana, to work on the mind and go beyond the mind.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra.
Yeah, actually, first of all, I tell that I'm very happy that Richa ji accepted our invitation. And I knew last time also when I had heard, I had thought of that we must bring her here and let the students listen to her. I'm sure she must have spoken to a lot of students elsewhere. But somehow or the other, I did not get that opportunity that we should allow the students to listen to you. I tell you that the last 15 minutes, it just went like that. And I'm sure everybody must be feeling very light on that. The exercise that you told us, in fact, I have been doing pranayama and yoga because I was a runner in the institute earlier, but I had some problem in my leg before the race. 10-kilometer runner I was practicing. So after that, I learned, in 82, I learned this Surya Namaskar and other few activities to a person in Jharkhand. And after that, I have been Brazil. But this one I had not done any time. Brahmari Pranayam I do. But I tell you, I think I am going to add this as well to my evening exercise, which I do after I come back from the institute. Because you can know I go from 24/7, I am working for the institute because I feel that a job has been given to you. So I can tell you that today you have enlightened many things, and the stories absolutely, in fact, the satisfaction I get because I am also associated with many people in the villages here. I see a satisfaction on when you give a pencil or a pen to a boy who has not got somehow. The happiness on his face gives you the actual happiness. We might have got several things, but when he gets that and when you see the face, on his face, the happiness, then we get a lot of happiness. I consider that is the actual happiness. And I have also read what Swamiji said, that it is happiness is when you make somebody else happy and see him the happiness. I can tell you that I have seen many of our friends who said that usko ye mil gaya. When I hear that my friend has got something, I feel so happy as if I have got it. And that I consider is the happiness. So your all four stories that you said, I think will remain. I'm sure they will remain with me. And I'm so grateful that you came. I don't want to ask any question because many things are so put in such a way that difficult to create a real line of demarcation. Because when you say dharma, artha, kam, moksha in the pyramid there, and moksha goes at the top. So when dharma, artha, kam, moksha at the base, everything is there when we are rising through. And as we go, when we come to different levels, moksha is in the end. So many people do not reach up to the moksha and artha. With earth itself, they are so engrossed that they start, instead of eating the regular food of rice and dal, they start eating the medicines. And therefore, if they take up to earth, every energy is in the earth only, then they don't reach anything. But if they want real happiness, I think they have to be above the ego and spread the happiness, joy on the face of others. This is what I learned from you. Thank you so much. And I think that my friends must have also learned. If they have any questions, we would love to listen to the answers. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So over to Sandhu sir for taking care of the question and answer session. And we'll try to restrict it to the next 5 to 7 minutes because as Tiwari sir pointed out, we forgot about time. Now it's 6:16 already. Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Patnaik. I will pick up just 2 questions. One from the YouTube listeners or viewers, and the other one who is with us here. So the first question is from Sudha Singh. What is the purpose of life? In long term, what is required to keep going ahead in life?
I would. I have seen many devotees asking Gurudev, what is the purpose of the life? So Gurudev always says, it's a very good question, keep it. And if somebody gives you the answer, don't follow it. If we have started thinking about what is the purpose of my life, it is very clear that one has already started to have insights that whatever I'm pursuing is very transient and there is a higher purpose. And if one has that search, one will really find the way else. It is that all that knowledge is there inside us. It will really break open and one will be able to tap that source of knowledge and really find one's journey. Nobody can show. Somebody can just show this is the way. But ultimately, everyone with their own time, at their own time, there is the time factor is very important. The samskara of that person is very important. And at the right time, the person, if it is a really sincere question, the person will find a way to one's journey.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. The second question that I picked up from our participant here is from Professor J. Mukherjee. He writes, fascinated to know about the subject-object cyclical relationship that you explained. what is the role of agency in this? Mind and agency. Do they only belong to human beings? What can we learn from the non-humans and reflections on biomimicry?
Reflections of?
Biomimicry. How do you pronounce that? Biomimicry.
I'm sorry, I don't understand this word. If the question can be put in a little straightforward manner.
I think he wants to know what is the role of agency, that is mind, and the agency that he's talking about. And does this also, is it also available in non-human beings?
To whatever limited understanding I have, the different philosophies have different ways to look at the mind as an agency. Whatever is my understanding, there are philosophical differences to understand even mind, beyond the mind, whether it is from the orthodox philosophy or the heterodox philosophy. So it depends which paradigm is he really wanting to. But if it is from the philosophy of yoga, yes, the mind is an object, the mind is a tool, the mind can be cultured, and one can go beyond the mind to that unchanging Brahman, to that unchanging self, I will say, the self beyond the mind. And if we take it from the Advaita perspective, everything is a projection. Even the body, the mind is also a projection of the Brahman. And the self doesn't reflect because it is obscured by the mind. So there is a philosophical difference as to how this is seen. But yes, there is an underlying agreement that there is something in, especially the human beings, that is the aspect of consciousness, which has not been understood by the modern science also. That is why they call it as the hard problem of consciousness. They're not able to understand how a brain can give to a first person inquiry. They're not able to connect the two.
I think he also tries to relate to say that, is there a mimicry in this relationship of agency and the mind and so forth, and human and non-human?
This part I have not been able to understand very well, mimicry. Does he want to check whether the other species which are not human, what is their state of consciousness? What is?
Yes. In other words, yes.
Okay, so
ma'am, yeah, sorry ma'am, if I can just clarify within maybe 10 seconds.
Okay, genius.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So this is, as Samdut sir pointed out, this is like biomimicry, and your talk definitely was fascinating where you talked about this subject-object thing. So I just wanted to ask you, ma'am, that like, is there any message from you that what we can also learn from nature? Because, for example, Tiwari sir was talking about the students and meditational practices, etc. So, for example, we have such a green and such a beautiful campus. So sometimes when we feel unhappy, we can also get back to nature and learn a whole lot of things from nature, from the trees, from life, from insects, from so many other things. So what would be your message on that?
My message would be to first bring the mind to the present moment. See, if the mind is the container, right? It is a container, and if the mind is not in the moment and we have the most beautiful nature around, we may not be able to observe the nature also, because the mind is crowded. Yes. So very important is, yes, nature plays a role. Everything in the present moment is beautifully progressing to all of us by nature. Anything, provided the mind is in the present moment. But if the mind is not in the moment and I have every possible good nature and everything around me, I will not be able to even look at it or even feel it. So it is very, very important. The mind, with its nature of oscillation into the past and future, which is common to all human beings, especially the adults. Mind is not in the moment. Somehow to bring the mind to the present moment. through the breathing, through meditation, and through so many possible manners. And when the mind is in the moment, certainly, if there is a beautiful nature, if there is so many things, it can certainly add to uplifting the mind and absorbing what the present moment is giving.
Thank you.
Mind has to be really brought back like to a childlike mind. When we were children, see, our mind was totally in the moment. When we would eat an ice cream would be all over our face. We were not even bothered. किसी ने अगर हमें चाटा लगाया, we would feel so unhappy, and next moment we would be smiling. Because the mind was minute to minute, moment to moment. But right now, the mind has lost all its, I would say, capability to be in the moment. And we do nothing to bring the mind to the moment. And each day we have certain impressions from what people said, what we heard. All the five senses are constantly bringing so many impressions to the mind. But what are we doing to clean the mind, to bring the mind to the present moment? Nothing. And that is why the mind is not in the place. And that is why it starts affecting the body and people start having psychosomatic illnesses, not taking care of the mind at all. So important. So that is why all these practices, meditation and whatever it takes to bring the mind to the moment, whatever it takes the mind so that there is no crowding, that's very, very important. The one thing which I always say, it is my body and I will take care of my body. Why not for our mind? It is my mind and I will decide what has to be there in my mind. Not 20, 30 people and 20, 30 events. It's my ghar. I have to decide what has to be inside this. Positive emotions, negative emotions, I have to decide. And there are ways to do it. The whole yoga philosophy is about that. Culturing the mind. And we need to teach the students how to do so. Otherwise, they may become successful externally. But if they're not able to handle their own thoughts and emotions, it can be very crippling. Very crippling if they don't know how to harness their thoughts and emotions. So these practices are very, very important.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. Thank you so much. I think we'll stop our question answer session now. And if Professor Patnaik would allow me, maybe I would start my last thanksgiving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shall I go ahead, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. It's a great honor, in fact, for me, and absolutely an honor to listen to you. Thank you to our director, who has been the core in this entire understanding for us to take this series forward. Without his push, without his idea, maybe we would have slowed. I'm really grateful to you, sir, for taking this initiative and spending so much time with us. We know how busy you are. You found time for this. This is, I consider it as a success already. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. We call you Reiki, sir. Thank you, Dr. Reiki, for being there. Without you, maybe without your understanding about the concept of trying to bring happiness to the world, the center may not have come across around the world and as well as in IIT Kharagpur. We're grateful to you. Thank you. You are also a busy man with I don't know how many billion-dollar companies around the world that you found time for us. Thank you so much. And of course, Dr. Richa, it's an absolute honor to listen to you. I know all our friends across the world have really enjoyed this, have understood what is mind. How can we take care of the mind by being present in the moment and breathing, as you mentioned, that begins with from the first day of our birth until we pass away is with us. And that is through which we can really practice ourselves to be more mindful in the moment. Thank you so much for this great teaching. This is just the beginning. You have given a very beautiful start. We are really grateful to you. And the whole thing would not have been successful without our participants from all across the world. I see many friends from Mexico. I see a great friend from Hong Kong. I see many friends from Bhutan. I also see many friends from England. Thank you so much for coming. If I missed any place, yeah, Brazil. We have, I think, Argentina as well. Thank you so much, friends from all over the world, that you came to make this as a big success for us. And not forgetting our own alumni, our own faculty here who have joined us today from our own center and from across the institute. Thank you, students who have joined us in the YouTube. Most of them are in the YouTube, as I understand. Thank you for being there, for really making this as a big, big success. It will be unfair if I don't say thank you, Professor Patnaik, that you've been behind this lead with your initiative. You have gone, forgive me, you have made us work, and with the support of the Honorable Director, we really made this through. Thanks to our speaker and to all of us ourselves.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. With this, we end our first session, but I will expect that all of you will come in our next section. Thank you, Sir Richard, sir, from Hong Kong. He's from Hong Kong there. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Sophia from Mexico. Thank you. Thank you, Lama Jigme from Bhutan. Thank you so much. Thank you.